History teaches us that World War II was won by great generals, superior strategy, and overwhelming force. That story is comforting. It suggests control, intelligence, inevitability. But there's an uncomfortable question historians rarely ask. What if the war was won not because of brilliance, but because of a psychological accident? Two of America's most famous generals, George S. Patton and Douglas MacArthur, are remembered as heroes.
That old soldiers never die. They just...
Flying down from Nova Scotia today.
Yet their personalities were radically incompatible with each other's theaters of war. If they had been swapped, Patton sent to the Pacific, MacArthur sent to Europe, the Allied victory would not have been guaranteed. Not because of weaker weapons or fewer troops, but because leadership psychology would have collapsed under the wrong conditions. This is not speculation without evidence. The clues were already there, hidden in official reprimands, quiet removals, and decisions Washington never explained publicly. In August 1943, during the Allied campaign in Sicily, General George S. Patton slapped 2 American soldiers hospitalized for what was then labeled battle fatigue. At the time, combat stress was poorly understood, but it was already recognized by military doctors as a real condition. Patton rejected that entirely. To him, psychological collapse was indistinguishable from cowardice. The U.S. Army reacted carefully. Patton was reprimanded, temporarily removed from frontline command, and the incident was suppressed from the press. However, he was not relieved permanently. This decision reveals something critical. Military leadership understood Patton's behavior was dangerous, but still useful. Patton was retained because Europe needed exactly his kind of leadership. Not empathy, not patience, speed. European warfare during World War II was structurally linear. Front lines were defined. Progress was geographic. Armies advanced through towns, rivers, and borders. Success could be measured visually and psychologically. Soldiers could see movement, momentum, and purpose. Patton thrived in this environment because his leadership psychology was built around motion and pressure. He believed hesitation killed more soldiers than aggression. In Europe, this belief often proved correct. Rapid advances disoriented German defenses and prevented effective counterattacks. His intolerance for delay forced momentum even when caution felt safer. From a psychological perspective, Patton imposed external pressure that replaced internal fear. Soldiers feared him, but that fear pushed them forward instead of inward. In high-mobility warfare, this dynamic can stabilize morale rather than destroy it. This does not make Patton humane. It makes him situationally effective. The Pacific War operated under entirely different psychological conditions. Combat was nonlinear. Jungle terrain eliminated visibility. Enemy positions were concealed, decentralized, and patient. Progress was slow and ambiguous. Units fought for weeks with no visible sense of advancement. This environment produced chronic psychological stress rather than acute fear. Soldiers were not reacting to immediate danger. They were enduring constant threat. Modern psychology recognizes this as a primary driver of combat stress breakdown. Effective Pacific commanders gradually learned that leadership required emotional containment. Soldiers needed to feel psychologically protected by their officers. Discipline still mattered, but humiliation and denial of trauma were destructive. Patton's leadership style would have been catastrophic in this context. His refusal to recognize psychological injury would have driven stress underground, where it becomes more dangerous. Soldiers would hide symptoms until collapse. This destroys unit trust. Psychologists call this an internalized threat dynamic, when a leader becomes a source of fear rather than safety. In jungle warfare, where survival depends on mutual trust and communication, this dynamic increases casualties. Patton's tactical instincts would also have failed. Aggressive movement without full intelligence in the Pacific often led units into ambushes. What worked in open European terrain became lethal in dense jungle. In short, Patton's greatest strengths would have become fatal weaknesses. Douglas MacArthur's success in the Pacific is often attributed to strategic brilliance. In reality, it was also a product of structural freedom. MacArthur operated with extraordinary autonomy. He controlled not just military operations, but narrative, media access, and political messaging. Psychologically, MacArthur exhibited traits consistent with authority immunity, resistance to oversight, and a strong identification with personal legacy. In the Pacific, this was tolerated because coordination demands were limited and centralized authority simplified decision-making. Europe was not structured that way. The European theater depended on coalition warfare. American, British, Canadian, and Free French forces operated under a shared command structure. Eisenhower's primary strength was not tactical genius, but coalition management. He balanced egos, negotiated compromises, and prevented fragmentation. MacArthur was fundamentally incompatible with this environment. His historical record shows consistent resistance to shared authority. During the Korean War, this culminated in open defiance of civilian leadership, resulting in his dismissal. This was not situational behavior. It was psychological pattern. If MacArthur had been placed alongside Eisenhower, Montgomery, and de Gaulle, conflict was inevitable. His insistence on unilateral control and public self-promotion would have undermined trust. Coalition warfare fails not through enemy strength, but through internal fracture. Even minor breakdowns in Allied coordination could have delayed D-Day, weakened supply chains, or reduced political resolve. Europe required leaders who subordinated ego to structure. MacArthur never did. World War II was not won because America always chose the best leaders. It was won because, by chance, the most psychologically extreme commanders were placed where their flaws caused the least damage. Patton stayed in Europe. MacArthur stayed in the Pacific. This was not foresight. It was necessity correcting error in real time. The Sicily incident exposed a truth the U.S. military never publicly admitted. Leadership effectiveness is not universal. Traits that generate victory in one environment can generate disaster in another. History prefers heroes. Reality prefers alignment. The most dangerous myth of World War II is not that we were unbeatable, but that greatness is transferable. It isn't. Strength is conditional. Leadership is contextual. If Patton had fought Japan and MacArthur had fought Hitler, the war would not simply have been harder. It might not have been won at all. World War II was decided not just by weapons and numbers, but by a fragile psychological balance that history barely survived once.